I'd like to call the Building and Facilities Construction Committee meeting to order on Wednesday, October 19th, 2022, at 4:06 PM in the resource room. Thank you, everybody, and I'd like to go around the room and you introduce yourself for the recorder.
Linda Brown.
Ray McClontz.
Fred Fontaine.
Shirley Masinski, and our town administrator is here, Matt Wojcik. So first order of business remains the Board of Selectmen assignment, which needs us to assess and the feasibility considerations of supporting the options for public safety and our highway department building projects. We have toured all facilities, found it very interesting, very, informative. Yes, we need lots of money if we were to do everything that we would like, but there are some areas that absolutely have to be done. So, any thoughts from last time? Fred?
Since Bob wasn't here last time, can we skip to some of these other things first? Like
We can.
revisit?
Yeah, we can. Good point. As Matt said, a lot, nothing much really has changed, but Matt, if you have anything that has, as far as the oil spill, no updates on that in the basement?
I'll go through them one at a time. I'm pretty sure at this point I know what's on the list.
Still, yeah, because there was, it's near closeout.
Yeah. So we're waiting for the tank and pump to be delivered, and the
Still,
work will be finished
okay.
when it is.
All right.
I think their projected date is in November. So
Okay.
we are ready to move to closeout on the HVAC units on the roof because 2 of the 3 defunct units were replaced. Maybe you saw the crane out here.
I think we
In early
took those
October.
off.
Yep. So
That's been removed.
you can take those off.
And Matt Wojcik said the green communities.
Matt Benoit.
Boy, I had
It's getting
another
rough.
meeting today.
There's a lot of Matts.
I did.
There's a lot of Matts now.
Yes.
More and more Matts.
Matt Benoit sent me a memo and said that he unfortunately was not able to attend, but does not have any updates on green community projects other than the jobs are finished, and we are now finishing payments and grant closeouts. We will be conducting fresh facility audits with a new project manager in the near future, but they are not scheduled as of yet.
So we did meet with the new project manager and got I think a good vibe from them. And we shared our concerns with prior relationships, and they seem to have a good answer for those concerns. So I'm hopeful
Good.
at this point that
All right.
they'll be better
Yep.
at what they do than the previous.
Next item is the backup, municipal backup generator. It's still in
Waiting for the generator.
transit. Yeah.
Yep.
Badlock Pond, they were doing some more wetlands planting, still not finished.
No, I think it's getting closer and closer. I mean, they come and they do really small things. There is still an active dialogue.
Okay,
so.
we'll leave it on then.
Yep,
And the municipal fire alarm was on hold.
yep.
Do we see what we're going to do here? Public safety radio system, almost.
So the riggers, the contract with the riggers through Marcus, not through the town,
Yeah.
was supposedly began Monday. We were all very much aware of the weather on Monday and
Yes.
yesterday, the ideal time to be climbing a tower.
Yeah.
Today was a great day to climb a tower. It was a little windy,
Yeah,
but it would seem that they should have started today. So when we leave this meeting, I'll be asking for an update.
okay. Good. And the municipal main roof replacement, that's still on, maybe to spring, you said.
Yep.
And the heat pumps for the fire station?
So last night, the select board approved the use of ARPA funds for the design work. on
For the
that,
heat pumps.
The heat pumps. That fee was quoted at $8,500, so it's under the threshold for additional consideration. But as you know, it's the same firm that's doing the electrical engineering work, so it's McRitchie.
Yeah,
Just another person who works for the firm is a mechanical engineer. They increased their fee, but this should be an economy for the town to
okay.
have it all done at once.
Okay, and the fire station upgrade, generator, electrical, you were mentioning $3,500 extra to design it. Is that going to go, according to my notes, design the mechanical?
No, I thought it was 85.
Okay, could
Well,
be.
the board approved 85, so if it's 35, we'll come in with 5,000.
This is-
How's that sound?
This is the, wait a minute, that's not the heat pumps. This was the generator,
Fire station upgrade.
electrical.
Yeah, I don't think it's 3,500 to do
Hi,
all the
Bob,
work.
thank you for coming. Bob Wormy has just joined us.
Well, I wrote down electrical done, still waiting for generator.
So the electrical work at the fire station, there's been a walkthrough scheduled, I believe, for all of the team to go through, engineering team to go through.
Yeah,
I don't think 3,500 is the fee for the electrical work.
okay.
I think you're missing a zero.
We'll see what our notes tell us,
Yeah.
what our minutes next time around.
But that contract was signed and executed, so I can get you a copy of the contract.
Okay, good. All right, we can go back to item 1 regarding the information that we have and the walkthroughs and what our thoughts are, and where do we want to go from here?
Okay.
Bob, you were at our last meeting, but
You show up late, you're in the hot seat.
would you have any thoughts? We kind of gave ours last time, but that doesn't mean we can't go back and,
Well, sure, I know we need, whatever we need to do for the DPW, the town garage needs something new, usable. The police department, I think they're doing pretty good. They may need some extra rooms, maybe if we could do something with the upstairs or something like that. I'm not sure about the fire. The fire department is mostly like mechanical stuff, like electrical generators, things like that. I'm not sure what they're looking for in the fire department.
well, you were there when we went through the walkthrough. Yeah, there's some needs, but I'm not sure a new building or things like that. We need to,
Yeah. So you guys have already talked about it.
no, we
Well,
waited for you.
Last meeting, yeah.
We did the last meeting, like I
Yeah.
said. Yeah.
And we pretty much said just what you said.
So we're all
Exactly.
kind of going on the same page here.
Exactly, yeah.
Our new member,
Yes.
this is Bob Wormy.
Hi, Bob Ray Fonz. Nice to meet you.
You did go and visit the
I
highway
did,
department.
I did, and I watched the video.
Okay.
And really was based upon your, the feedback from the last meeting. It seemed like everybody was in the same agreement that the highway department was lacking for, I guess, lacking for a better term. And watching the video was very concerning. I think that would be an immediate concern, especially with winter coming up. But there's no way you're going to put money into it and have stuff done by the winter. But
Right.
if it was, it sounds to me like that, or looks to me, that should be the priority come springtime. And money, whether it's a whole new building, different property, whatever is best for the town, because you can't patchwork that any further, as far as I can see.
And the idea of moving this along would be to have it as a project for town meeting in the spring, right?
But how long does that mean if you have the town meeting in the spring? Because they needed something 5 years ago, and I think.
Or 10.
Yeah, so the concern is, so if the meeting happens in the spring, they vote yes or vote, however, in a perfect world, everybody votes yes. When does stuff start happening?
Out to bid, for plans and,
Could be several years,
It's going to take time.
no?
Well,
Because ideally, it'd be nice because like I said, this winter's out of the question, there's no way it's going to happen, but ideally, it'd be nice to have something kind of rolling by next winter.
yeah, I mean, I think May's a little time off from now. So it really, the course that is chosen has an impact on the timing. So I'll answer your question or your comments through the chair, if I may. Based on the presumption that we're only talking about a highway building. So if that's all that the project entails is a highway building. We should use the intervening time from now to then. Well, now I'm stuck with town meeting being in November. The warrant is closed.
Right.
So, I mean, we could have a special if we needed to, for this sole topic of having engineering, a budget for engineering to design the building, all the way to construction plans. And whether you voted the funds, you probably wouldn't be ready to vote the funds for the actual construction until the spring, because that would probably come along with a borrowing instrument and all of the finagling that the finance department here has to do with the consultant to arrange for bond counsel and the bond issue. There is a strategy for the issuance of bonds of certain sizes and timing and all the rest of it. We would also have to be rated. Every time you go out to bond, you get another ratings call. So it would be, I think it's possible, but challenging to get it approved. So May, town meeting is very early this year, because the first Monday of May is May 1st. So really, we have to have the warrant wrapped up in the middle of March. So we'd have really between whenever we could have a special to March to get the design done. Now, the good thing about a highway building is it's not an office building or a police station. It's cold storage and some living quarters and, that's it. Really, it's more about, the conversation is more involved as to where it would be located, which piece of property would we utilize, and what are the ups and downs of each of those
How
parcels
much
of real
land is
estate.
necessary, how much, yeah.
And what would you do with the existing site? I mean, I'm happy to give you a straw man. The straw man would be the existing site becomes the location for salt and sand storage and the equipment that would be loaded, right? A small cold storage building for maybe the front end loader and some other pieces of the sanders and the plows, the sander boxes and the plows. Then you would build your building somewhere else, because there's not enough room on that lot for the size facility that is needed. Always have to remind people, we have a lot of stuff at the old fire station on Cottage Street that is highway stuff. So the chipper, the hot box, trailers. So that would be pushing the boundaries. It might be ready for May.
that's if there was a special.
But you would need a special, because we're past this one.
So basically, what our job is what we want to recommend as a project, right?
Right.
Not the location
No, you don't have to get into any of that. It would be, what would you hire someone in the design field to do? What question do you want them to answer? I can think of a number of different possibilities. One would be just a highway barn only, if this committee only wants to recommend that. A second would be a highway barn plus building upgrades necessary for both fire and police, right? So let's get a handle on what it would cost, what would you add to fire, what would you do to this building to make it so that both town hall and police department could be here. A third, somewhat broader study would be compare what I just said to the cost of a single construction, brand-new building for all three departments with common spaces shared as one way to maybe save money on the construction. As sort of your backstop, because while it may seem like that would necessarily be the most expensive option, when you start to add up the cost of a new highway barn, additions to the fire station, and the rehab of this building to bring it up to what it would need to be to house more operations here, you may end up kind of close.
Do we have municipalities that house all three of them? Because
Somebody told me there is one.
I know Plainville has a facility where it has fire and police. I'm not sure about highway department, though.
So
And
they
actually, the
just,
town hall's there, too, I think. it's
the
same.
town hall is there, so I just talked to their town manager about this. I think I was doing a background check on one of the engineers that was
Yeah.
bidding here. I think town hall and police are together
Okay.
in
Like we-
Plainville.
And then the fire department's behind it in the old school.
I think so.
Maybe you might be right in that.
And their highways, I think, always going to be.
It's always been on West Bacon Street, so, yeah.
So you know Plainville. So do
I grew up there,
Oh,
so that's why, yeah, but I knew the new facility, because that was the old school, that's the elementary school I went up, I guess,
So
so.
I grew up on Brent Swamp Road, just over the line.
Oh, yeah, you did,
Yeah.
yeah.
I lived
Yes,
there
you
for
did.
48
Up in
years.
Cumberland, or is it?
Cumberland.
Yeah. Yeah.
I told you I'd write you a recommendation, so I wrote the most expansive one, because I can always take away from it. It's easier to take away than it is to add.
Sure.
But I, just to backstop the analysis, the only thing is the design study is more expensive if you include everything, right? But you also would answer a lot of questions, I think,
Sure.
because you're going to the floor of town meeting to ask for these funds. And if somebody stands up and says, well, why don't you guys just build a whole new building? Once you add all the LED and all these other things that people want in modern construction, you may actually find out that it's maybe a little more expensive to build, but far less expensive to operate because it's so much more energy efficient. So before they're asked to spend millions of dollars on something, the town meeting voters might want to know what is the difference. So that's why I drafted it that way. I think we all agree the immediate crisis is highway.
Is there land available to build something that would house all three?
I think so, right?
Because that, wouldn't you have to consider that also, because if we don't currently own the land, then you're gonna have to purchase the land or whatever that's gonna go
Right.
for.
And that really becomes, that's when you start, when Linda says years, now that starts to take years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we would have to advertise for the property or engage in a dance around eminent domain and market compensation and other things. Because sometimes you might find somebody who's willing to engage in the process to sell a bigger piece of property. We have the old mobile pipeline property, which is
How many acres
tucked in
is
as
that?
now.
Do you remember?
You would have to ask. I think it's over 100
That's it.
when it's all
That's the one you were
put together.
talking about.
Yeah.
So that goes all the way back to Rydell and then all the way up to Maine in the front.
But someone was concerned about the water.
It's all in the
Yeah.
aquifer protection zone. There are design elements that get you around that and make you comply.
But as you said, if you keep the salt and
And
keep
it's
that
existing
stuff where it's
location.
existing.
Yeah. So there's that. We do have a sizable parcel behind the old grammar school and the soccer field.
And there is
So-
water problems.
There is water
there.
issues there as well.
And there's actually water issues where they are,
Flooding?
nearby, where the highway department is. up in the back.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a wetland
Yeah.
behind there. So, but there's an easement that crosses in between highway and fire. So, you know, again, the town wielding its considerable municipal authority could take that easement, right, for compensation, of course, to make it possible to use the entire property and not be stuck because you're butting up against somebody else's right to pass and repass. But I don't know how much room is there, really. So we own the land where we dump all the stumps and everything else now. So that's behind the old grammar school, which apparently is an old poor farm. I did not know that. But I was reading my historical Douglas texts. So that building, everybody calls it the grammar school, but originally it was for the hard labor for those convicted of crimes of poverty. We call it poor farms.
But there is a poor farmhouse
With
up
Dickie
on
Downs.
South Street.
Dickie Downs lived there.
Yeah. And that's where they lived. And that's interesting.
May have been more than one.
Yeah. Or one before the
One
other.
before the other.
Yeah.
So anyhow, those are your two most apparent options. The town owns a considerable amount of land in different locations that are less optimal. Because everybody wants to be in that center of town because they can go down Main Street to either direction and branch
Sure.
off.
Which I,
And
you
then you
know,
could always go up to, I mean, you could take, you don't have to have all the offices on ground level. You could have your vehicles on ground level and then put people above it. So you don't necessarily need a huge footprint, but you would need a fairly substantial piece of land.
Now that
You know, 25, 30 acres.
mobile pipeline, there would be easy access, large trucks. I've never seen the driveway for it, so.
So the driveway is right in between, I don't know everybody's name there, but I think one of the parties is Culinaro. There's a driveway there. It actually has a sign on the street. And there's a home, and then next to it, it looks like a shed. It's actually the pump station for the water department. That's the entrance back to, there's an old building there where Buckeye
Yeah.
ran the pipeline operation. I'm a little bit annoyed because that was allowed to deteriorate and is now not even useful. So we got stuck with that mobile trailer because I couldn't put people in that building even though I wanted to because it would have been perfect, frankly. But there's three-phase power to that location because the pipeline ran on three-phase power. So there's actually a transformer pad there already.
I mean, I can see that site as a better location than where the soccer fields are.
Yeah, I think that's not optimal there at all.
and it is
High-
fairly
high.
near the same location, center of town.
Yeah,
And would keep you close to your salt pond. Right. Again, thinking out loud, only, the fire department also has equipment stored on Cottage Street. And I think the situation there is not only about what they need now, but where they're likely to be headed. And I found this is an exercise I'm going through because above and beyond this recommendation, I think there's pieces of this analysis that I've been asking for that haven't materialized yet, so I'm starting to do some of it myself. But even the most straightforward and simple statistical inference, right, about the trends, demographic trends across the country and how they translate to Douglas, based on the notion that we're probably going to grow faster than the rest of the Commonwealth just because of economic development, because of our location, trends in the marketplace where people can work from home. Why would you rent a condo in Boston and telecommute from there when you can live in the woods in Douglas, have a nice life, and still make your money, right? Why would you do that? So it's not crazy to think that the town could be looking at 12,500 people or so within the next 30 years. That's not a crazy number at all. But it's 3,500 more people, and we're only 9,000 now. So what if national demographic trends played out in the same way in Douglas as they're going to play out across the country according to the census? Well, our population of people 65 and over would double. I've asked the fire chief, and I won't get the answer until next week, but I've asked, what is the proportion of our ambulance calls generated by the population that's 65 and over? Because you have to take that number and double it. And it's entirely possible that along with the additional population and the aging of the population, so you have two things generating more calls, a lot more calls than we have today. It would be likely that we would have to staff 2 ambulances 24/7, not just one. In that case, your duty crew, instead of being 2 people, would be 4. Right, so now you'd say, all right, so if I need 2 ambulances and one of my old ambulances, I'll stick it in the garage and call it a backup in case one of the 2 frontline pieces doesn't work. So now I need a building with 3 bays just for ambulances and enough room for the staff to rest overnight when the calls are stuck in on 24/7 shifts. That's a pretty substantial addition, but there is room on that lot to handle that. And if you listen to the select board meeting last night, you know, one of the things we could do with ARPA money is run sewer all the way up to the highway, along with the water main improvement, because that's where we get a lot of breaks, and the water main is right up Main Street. So now you would,
Are you saying towards the Webster?
towards the Webster side.
Okay.
So bringing sewer all the way to the highway department. You could then take your new facilities at both fire and highway and hook them into sewer and be able to utilize more of the square footage of the lot. Because we don't have any coverage restrictions in Douglas. You can cover almost 100% of your lot if you have utilities. So that's another option for the town, right? To deal with the fire issues without having to build a whole new building. Use the one you have now as the basic footprint and then expand, probably almost double the footprint. This building is only complicated in terms of sharing it with the police predominantly by one issue, which is the electricity in the building is really old. And in our tour, you know, we got the, you didn't do the tour with Howard Gerber, though. You did the tour with Adam. So Howard puts a lot more color into it. But we've got those kind of breakers that don't trip, right? So they're just really old. They're original to the school. The school was built in 1927, and so they're over almost 100 years old. So call it. Picking a number out of the air. Somebody had mentioned like 400,000, 450,000 at one point. Call it $500,000. Just to upgrade the power in the building, above and beyond the emergency generator, actually upgrading all of our receptacles and making sure we have enough places to charge things and all the rest of it. That's just, but the rest of the building, this is a great building.
But then there's also, within that though, that also becomes a safety issue that you need to update anyway.
Yeah.
So it's not just necessity, it's safety.
So as, and you hear Selectman Fitzpatrick especially, because he's in the building trade, talk about it a lot. You know, you just have to shuffle the pieces inside this building in order to free up space. So a lot of what we have here is storage on top of storage on top of storage. And we would have to resolve that, so create an electronic archive for all those things that we don't have to retain. Those things that we do have to retain in hard copy, we need a place to put it all so that we can free up the use of almost everything you see behind a closed door here has something in it, right, that we don't think we can throw away. And almost the entire upstairs, to the point where we've started to do some load calculations to make sure we don't have too much up there on the floors. That being the case, that all has to be resolved. One of the proposals in the ARPA, and I did print out the ARPA list for you to distribute, is to take the locker room from the old gym and convert it into a vault for our most sensitive and ancient documents, because they're currently in this room somewhere, I won't exactly say where, but they're not protected by climate control.
Right.
So they are deteriorating at a rate and in a manner that makes it very difficult to save them. They should be put in a climate-controlled environment with protection, and that would also free up space in this room. We have
big safes in the other room. And
Enormous, heavy safes that were brought in here by riggers. I think when Town Hall was first moved here,
Yes,
it almost looks like they took out a wall here in Gene's office to get the biggest safe
Probably.
through. We do utilize some of them for financial operation, but most of it is actually ancient documents. But if they were removed, the creature comforts of occupying some of these offices where they take up a lot of space right now would be substantially better. So it's not cost prohibitive to convert this building into a combined fire town hall with more room for everybody to work.
you mean
It's-
police?
But it's not free either. It's not something we can do on a weekend with some garbage bags and some volunteer effort. There's really significant things that would have to,
And Matt, you said fire, you meant
but police, yeah. So, not to muddy the waters, but those are really to me, if I was going to hire a designer that's sort of A, B, and C options, is, how much information do you want to have that you can quote from to persuade town meeting to spend the funds. Highway, I think, is a separate and discrete thing. Like, that is, you don't need to do anything else in order to resolve the highway issue. The question that was presented some time ago by the select board, though, was, if we're going to invest that kind of money in a highway bond, we should be able to answer the public's thought process on why wouldn't we do it all at the same time.
How expensive are such studies, and how long does it take? Highway needs something like 10 years ago, like we keep saying. Would it push that project back by expanding it? And how expensive is it?
I'm going to use the rule of thumb of 10%. So design, figure if you think the cost of the project is $2.5 million, then the design's probably going to be $250,000.
Per facility. Plus, if you say, okay, also tell us how much for one big facility, it's another number on top of all that.
There you might save, right, because you're not doing 3 discrete projects. You're building a single building,
And a single design.
a single design. So they don't have to learn new conditions. They're going to design to code as they understand it if they're architects.
But if it's
Little
one,
shot at my architect friend.
but if it's one big place, it might be,
Sorry.
if it's one big place, it might be located over here. If it's 2 others, it could be there and there. So it's probably going to be, so it's not inexpensive to find. So it's difficult to make a decision without knowing those numbers.
Well, so here's where, where the state, I'll tell you what they tell us all in training. It's like brainwashing camp, like being in Waco or Jonestown with these people, right? Every dollar you spend on design is a dollar wisely spent, provided you pick a good designer. They're probably going to, a good design will save you so much trouble for later on and trying to skimp on design. Because if you skimp on design and people at town meeting who know the building industry start to pick at it, well, then you have a weak design. And you may not get the confidence that you need to have to get people to vote to spend their money on it.
And then all we add alternates that keep.
Add alternates,
plugging into it
change
because of what-
orders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a great photo of a yacht sitting in the marina. The name of the boat is Change Order. But that's the God's honest truth is that, and I think you will remember this, you had all kinds of trouble with the boiler project and the designer being kind of all over the place, and you ended up spending a whole lot of money on design because it really had to be done over again. Because they didn't take, the original didn't take into account, I think it was louvers, air feeds, and, yeah. And what we're finding, so when it comes to the projects we're doing already in town, we're using Stantec, which is like top shelf national engineering firm, but it's so smooth. It's just like, it is such a relief. They got it, they handled it. They already thought of that. That's nice. That's really nice.
So,
Well, just my own thoughts, hearing all this, I think it makes most sense to, obviously, we need design for Highway Barn. And the other two projects, say, I hear your point that it might end up, one big facility might be end up kind of, but the effect on the, it's going to be a huge number, and the effect on the taxpayer all at once is going to be painful. But if we do the Highway Barn, we have to do the Highway Barn, the taxpayers are going to see that, yes, let's do that. The other projects don't have to be done at the same time. It could be, we could spread out the pain by having it be 3 separate projects, Highway Barn, renovation here, and the fire department has some things that need to be taken care of, like now. So I don't know if that's a separate project to get those things, like,
If I may answer.
yes.
I think you're right. There are some things that we have to do right away at the fire department. So HVAC is already in the works, and it's already on the ARPA list. So I've asked the select board for the funds to do heat and air conditioning and
For
ventilation.
where?
The fire department.
The fire department.
If I had to rank order the 3 in terms of the priority, I would mirror yours. So the highway, then this building, because this building is more involved, right? And we've already done so much. Town meeting has already approved a lot of funds for this building. So we would just be continuing, frankly, work that's already in progress to make best use of this space. The frustrating thing for me, it's not frustrating, but it's almost embarrassing. We heat the second floor,
And for
but
store,
we don't use it, which is not, the track record we've built here is of trying to reduce costs, be more efficient. And that's just kind of galling, like, ugh, right? So if we could resolve that and take a little bit better care of some of the assets in the police station, specifically their IT backbone and some of the other things that don't necessarily have to be where they are. As long as you can run wires to it, you can put it anywhere. You just have to assure certain physical security and other issues. But it's doable in the envelope of this building. And the fire station, after we do all this work, right? So let's think about what town meeting has approved. A roof
this is
and-
for the fire
for
station.
the fire station.
Yeah.
With money already approved includes a roof. We've already done insulation and weatherization. We're doing their backup generator and their electrical system inside the building. And now if ARPA funds are approved by the select board, we'd be doing HVAC. So if I had to put somebody on hold and say, you're going to need to wait 5 years before we can really get to building you an addition, I would rather have that conversation than have everything go south and not do the highway, even the highway, right?
agree completely.
Yeah,
So,
yep. Anybody? Questions, comments?
I have a question, is it really do we have to consider the cost to the taxpayer? Is it just the building itself and the facility, our recommendation to the board of selectmen?
so when you make a recommendation of the scope of design, you needn't worry about the cost of it. You can't.
That's right.
Because we are forbidden in the designer selection process from taking into consideration cost. So that RFQ, request for qualifications process that we've been through twice now, we don't talk about the fee until after the selection has been made.
Right.
You could.
I understand that, but do we even think about the cost at all, period?
Of the building?
For the whole
For the
project.
whole project, or just say, this is what we need, cost be what it may?
Well, the design phase is probably kind of washed into that, and you don't really notice that at the end phase, I guess. If it's $10 million, then you probably didn't consider that it was, I don't know, $1 million or $500,000 for the design.
If all we were doing is, let's, again, using the assumption that all we're doing is a highway bond, Madam Chair. The milestones would be, there would be a conceptual milestone with a presentation. Okay, I've thought about all the needs that I've heard from the department. This is my proposed solution. Conceptually would be a building that looks like this, and my best cost estimate on that building would be X. And if everybody's eyes pop and say, oh my God, right? You need to go back to the drawing board. You'd be going back to the drawing board at the conceptual phase, not at the end with the construction plan phase. It would be too late. It would be a terrible waste of money to go all the way to construction plans and then say it's too much money. So we built these milestones in to have a lot of checkpoints, so that when it does get to that final approval from town meeting, it should not be hard. Right. You know, I have a number in mind that the town will this year, or has in fiscal '23, rolled off a debt issue that has been paid. And the debt service on that bill was about $400,000 a year. That was excluded debt, so it doesn't really show up in the town budget. We show it, but it's not part of the levy. It's excluded from the levy. So the voters of the town voted to do whatever that was, and I believe it was the high school bond, one of the high school bonds that is defeased. So it's gone. So you could say, you could back out how much borrowing was there that the taxpayer would not be sensitive to because they've paid it all these years already, right? And say, well, at least $400,000 worth of debt service is gone. If you let that roll off and you let it roll off for a couple of years, and then you come back and say, well, we need another debt exclusion, everybody's going to see their bill go up, and they're going to compare it to last year's bill, not 3 years ago when they still had that debt service. So there was a window here where that transition would have been seamless. Now it won't be. We're going to issue at least one town tax bill without that debt service in your bill. So what does that mean? The levy goes up about 2.5% a year, which is just about $400,000. So this year, if the levy went up 2.5% for municipal and school budget, but this debt rolled off, it will, to the taxpayer, look like a zero, right? Depending entirely, because it's a reval year on what you did to your house and what the market says your house is worth. That's not my province, that's the assessor. Let's assume, all things being held equal, that you didn't increase or decrease your value. You'd be looking at a very level year this year, because the debt's rolling off, but the levy increase will offset that. So, getting back to the answer. Douglas is one of the most heavily indebted municipalities in the Commonwealth. And it stems from the fact that you are one of the smallest towns that has a fully self-supporting K-12 public school system. I say self-supporting, you get a lot of state aid. You get a tremendous amount of state aid for it, but you still have it. And the buildings were built with debt exclusions. So your capacity to pay debt is pretty close. Your existing debt is closer to your capacity than many other towns. So there's not an infinite range of borrowing. So keeping it down to a dull roar is definitely an objective. That's not a precise answer, but I think you...
No, I understand, yeah. It clears up the question I had in my head.
Comments, questions? Do you want to go another meeting and seek more information, or look at some of the buildings in other communities?
It sounded like in your walkthrough that the gentleman at the highway department he had done some research into other facilities in different towns. He even mentioned a couple of them in his research and what they were doing. I'm new to this, but I would say I think it might be beyond putting it off. Because each meeting that you have and you're extending further and further, it means you're going to be further into next year or the year following before something's actually done.
So we're looking for what we're going to actually recommend to the
To
Board of Selectmen.
To the Board of Selectmen. So before you move on, are there specific things, say, in the, we know the highway it's got to be done, whatever. They're in bad shape. Fire department, are there any specific things other than what we are already have on our list and what the town is moving forward with? Are there any other things that you saw the building you think need to be taken care of? I think you've mentioned a few, but I just think it's fair to do this, and then we'll do the police station too. Thoughts?
Nothing that I recall.
Safety issues that we aren't taking care of already, or, some upgrading of the building.
Fire didn't seem to me to be an emergency. They're holding their own.
Okay. And I think, as you said, the heating, ventilation and so forth, that's moving on.
I have a request for funds.
Yeah, okay. Mainly, it's, my concern in that building is, where the 24/7 people have to sleep, hot weather, cold weather, whatever. That's an area that I think is concerning, and ventilation. And police department, comments, questions? I think they could use some upgrading, but it's, something that, once we know where this building is, we've all mentioned and Matt's mentioned, and we can do something, and shuffling around, if you want to call it that, but upgrading it, again, electrical. But they do, it's not as desperate as the highway.
Yes, quite.
So it's up to you, what you think we should recommend to the Board of Selectmen that they move on with. Help with maybe a motion if you want that. Matt maybe
I
could.
thought Fred was working up a motion.
Yeah, no, not exactly a
go ahead.
motion just yet. I've whittled it down in my head now to maybe we just do the highway barn now, and knowing the other departments, we know there's issues there, but it seems to be things that can wait. Wait, for lack of a better word, spread out the pain of how we're going to pay for it.
Okay.
And I don't ever see one massive building, so massive maybe is not the right word, but I think it's more cost effective to utilize what we have for the time being. I think it might be more palatable to the taxpayers as well.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
So what you're recommending is that to the Board of Selectmen, they seek design and, or that, what's your motion?
Matt, can you help me with that,
See?
the wording?
I had my pen out, I was just going to write down what other. Let me just, I'll try to do it stream of consciousness, that the Board of Selectmen proceed to design a new Highway Department building
Or seek designs for,
and/or ancillary facilities, right? Because we want to include the salt barn conversation. Up to and including final design. So what that would mean is, we would not put it out an RFQ only for conceptual design or even before that feasibility study. We would be putting out a complete design RFQ. You're going to take us through conceptual to final, with that key milestone being there for scoping purposes. So to make sure the project doesn't just go to final design, that it stops and gets approvals and then goes to final.
so we're
Oh, could you reread that?
Sure. So the BFCC recommends that the Board of Selectmen proceed to design a new Highway Department building and/or ancillary facilities up to and including final design.
I'll make that as a motion.
Second.
Motion made by Linda, seconded by Fred. Any further discussion?
Do we need to add into this proposal? No, this committee realizes there are other needs, but they don't seem to be
No.
as urgent. Just keep it simple. Okay.
Yeah.
That could be a report, but this would be what you're asking, what you're recommending them to do.
Okay.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? So voted.
Okay, so we'll put that on their agenda for November 2nd. First.
Tuesdays, November 1st.
Yeah, November 1st. So the way that would work is if they agree with your recommendation, then it would come back here, right? So I would draft an RFQ, it would come back here for approval, and then we would issue it. And then that process that we go through of getting the packages and sorting out, we want to work with the scoring and all the rest.
Right.
We usually-
It's
that's a
not
good-
going to get away from us.
No, you're going to do it.
All right, we'll move on to the ARPA funding and qualification discussion, Matt, and,
So I'm going to hand around the chart that I distributed to the select board last night. I'm going to keep a copy because I think it is enough for everybody with me. keeping up. All of the, so the process kind of worked like this.
Thank you.
All of the department heads were asked to submit proposals for significant cost items that they don't currently have funds for, that they've sought perhaps through the capital process and not achieved, et cetera, but still represent needs of their department. And that process started at the end of April, beginning of May. And we got all the list in, and the board has really had the list all this time. And we've been refining the list on and off during the summer and early fall. I'm starting to get concerned because as a day-to-day manager, I have to eventually obligate these funds, which means I have to back out from the time that the funds turn into a pumpkin to the point at which I can put it out to bid and still have a contract by then. So there is no crisis, right? The funds have to be at least obligated with an executed contract by December 31st, 2024.
Okay,
So that's
Yeah.
a 14 months away.
yeah.
So it's starting to get a little bit compressed. And what concerns me there too is that we still have some supply chain aberrations out there that have an impact on how fast we can expect things to turn around. I know that almost every community has struggled with this conversation because it's a very unusual place for any select board to be in. Because typically, if they want to ask for funds, they go to town meeting for approval and the voters give it to them. ARPA is a federal grant, so it's available to the select board without further appropriation. It's at this point, $2.37 million they have to spend on projects.
2 point what?
3.7, because we got 2.7, we've spent, the biggest chunk of what we've spent is $250,000, which was chosen specifically to be a very round number, was for premium pay to cover employee activities during a period of time early in the pandemic when we could not protect them from microbial transmission.
Yep.
We couldn't get access to PPE, and they all still had to come to work and do their jobs. So rather than try to calculate build up to a number, we established a number and then allocated it by the hours that were worked by those employees. So you don't get a bonus check for working 10 hours and get the same as the person who worked 1,000 hours. You get 10 hours worth of premium pay because that's what you worked, 10 hours of premium coverage. So that program has been vetted through our expert consultants and approved. That was 250, we were at 2.7, and we've spent a small amount, I forget what it was. But it was, compared to 250, it wasn't a significant project. So we're left with this 2.37, and I could see different people going in different directions as to what projects they would be willing to support or not support. I consider it to be part of any town manager or town administrator's job to try to reconcile that. So what I did is I got trained in the Senate, the United States Senate, right? So what do people do in legislatures? They make a Christmas tree bill, right? They put a present for everybody under the Christmas tree, and it's a package, and the better part of wisdom is to support Christmas tree bills, because that's how you can be pretty sure everybody's going to get along at the end, because everybody got at least something that they were hoping to see in the program. That is not where we ended up last night. We ended up cherry picking some of the less controversial projects. I will try to run briefly through how I constructed the Christmas tree, though, because it still might be informative to you. We have really we had 3 water projects that were suggested by the superintendent, by the systems manager. One of them was that he was concerned that there was significant I&I infiltration into this wastewater system around town. And so in order to determine whether or not we had I&I, there was all these smoke tests were done in people's property and in the street, and wherever the smoke came up, there was a place where water was getting into our system. Well, it turns out we did very well. And so the proposal to line a lot of our sewer pipes is no longer a viable proposal. So of the 3 that he suggested, we eliminated 1 by doing fact-finding. So there's still some I&I, but it's not going to be at the level of millions of dollars. The other 2 projects that remain form a very difficult choice, and you cannot afford to do both with 2.37. You've got to pick one. The notion being that whatever you pick, whatever's left over is left over for the remaining projects that have been asked for by the department heads. So the 2 projects, one I already mentioned, would be to address water main break problems from Franklin Street all the way to the highway bond. Now, originally, the thought was much more significant project to upgrade the water main all the way from Franklin to its terminus in Southwest Maine, and then loop it back, okay, up to the water tank on Church Street, with the notion being that the loop is highly beneficial to the system, because now you're getting water from more than one direction. It's just, that's like a $7 million thing. And it doesn't bring sewer up to those town properties at Highway and Fire and at Buckeye, where we might want to build the building. So the systems manager recommends, well, let's go to the highway barn. The town would pay for the sewer extension because there is insufficient customer base in that part of town to support the economics, the business economics of running pipe. So the enterprise fund could never get approval for any sort of grant or loan because there's not enough customers with enough flow.
Do you, excuse me for interrupting, do you have a percentage of how many people in town are on private?
I do know where to get that number, I don't know it
Okay,
off the top.
just what, yeah, all right.
And the Water Commission would be asked at the same time to go out and borrow from the funds they have access to borrow from, state and federal programs, to upgrade the water main on the same length of roadway, which would not solve all of the water main issues, but it would solve a lot of the biggest issues. Because there have been a lot of breaks from the highway to Franklin Street. And then looking at it practically, once you dig 2 trenches in the road, you are, in fact, the project will include curb-to-curb paving, once they're both done. So you're really, at the end of the day, you're getting a nice little package that's wrapped in a bow, right? Because you're getting sewer extension, water main improvement, it's all gonna get done at the same time, one disturbance, the traffic flows through town, compact it all properly, do the stormwater management, and pave it curb to curb. And if you thought about it, you could now get off 146 and Gilboa Street, drive on new pavement because of all the work we're doing there, all the way up North Street, go onto old pavement on Main, but once you get to Franklin, you'll be on new pavement again until the highway barn, and then when you get to Webster Street, you'll be on new pavement again. So that, over the last 5 years, you would have really addressed major part of the pavement in town where all traffic flows. Yeah, it would be a disruptive mess. This has to be summer work. You could never tear up Main Street with the school's session, ever. It'd be a disaster. It would make things really challenging. So that's one proposal. And last night, Bob Sullivan, who's the systems manager, said, "Where'd you come up with $1.5 million?" And I said, "Well, that's the number I picked." Right? That's what the town would give you, is 1.5, and have you go out and try to borrow maybe up to $1 million, which is not a big thing for them to ask the state for. The alternative is Depot Street. So it is an ambition of the systems manager to improve water service in this part of town by getting rid of the dead-end water line on Depot Street, to replace it, because it's one of the original water pipes in town. So it goes back to like 1900, parts of it go back to 1900. So you're replacing all that old cast iron pipe that's over 120 years old, and then loop it by going under Maple Street over to Martin.
Okay.
And so now, instead of having these dead ends, you'd be creating a loop. You wouldn't get any more reverse flows when you had a large draw, like we had the fire over here, and we had just dewatered everything because we sucked all the water out of the system. Because you're running by Town Hall, and one of the things we need to do to occupy the second floor is sprinkler. We don't have sufficient flow in this building. We have a 4-inch service in this building, which is not enough. We sprinkled the first floor, we cannot sprinkler the second floor with that service. Plus, it's kind of a no-no, and saying it out loud almost feels weird, but we draw our domestic service from our fire suppression connection. So that's not supposed to happen, never. But that's the way the school was set up. It was okay to do it back in the day, so that's where it was done. So part of running a new water main and up Depot Street would be a substantial improvement to the way this building is serviced, okay? The downside is Depot Street's in pretty good shape pavement-wise, so you're tearing up good pavement, which kind of stinks. And we have a culvert up here at the old grist mill that needs work. If we start disturbing the roadway on either side and the abutments, we may end up having to address that culvert. Because parts of that culvert have already washed out from excessive stormwater. So that adds to the cost of the project and does not appear here as a cost. I think it's in my comments. It could be up to $1 million to fix that culvert. So we would have to leverage not only ARPA funds, but our entire year's worth of Chapter 90, plus town capital funds to fix the culvert and do Depot Street. But you see the benefit, of course. We're talking about this being one of the 3 buildings where we might try to house a major town function or improve. We're kind of stuck until we do sprinklers. So that would be about $2 million of the ARPA funds. The rest, I rank ordered according to my priority system, but no pride of authorship. But I'll just go through the projects that have been submitted. The school department has done a tremendous amount of research into its security situation and has arrived at, I think these numbers are going to move a little bit, but a preferred security management system that involves cameras, door locks, annunciators that will tell people what doors are open, what doors are closed, and that all would tie into either a new fiber circuit that we built for the public safety radio or our existing fiber service. But it would substantially improve the connection between the security system and the schools and our police department. So that's I think a manageable number at close to call it $80,000, $81,000. The next project that I pulled from the list to recommend was, there's a small roof over the elevator shaft next to the gymnasium. It leaks, and it shouldn't be leaking. Elevators are really expensive. That elevator makes this building ADA accessible, so it really needs to be safeguarded. This is really short money to solve a really big problem. That's a brand-new quote that just came in from a roofing expert, a roofing contractor, said $19,000.
Is that another flat roof?
Yeah, it's a little flat roof. It doesn't leak all the time. It leaks when we have these, really windy, heavy rain. It must be coming in sideways or pulling up to the point where it gets to a leak point. The next thing that I have on my list is the fire department heating, ventilation, air conditioning. So I put in $8,500 for design. Demolition of the existing system and installation of a new one, we've estimated at $115,000. The next project would be to complete the HVAC improvements in this municipal center. So we did the 2 rooftop units, right? We have 3 that manage the air here on the first floor, 3 big units. So you can see them go out this window here. There are 2 in the back, 1 in the front that manage airflow here. Then we have 2 small, we basically call them micro splits. One is in that cable building office over there, and the other is in our IT room behind us. There's a lot of equipment in those 2 rooms. It's about $130,000 worth of equipment between the 2 rooms that is sensitive to temperature. This PTAC in here is in terrible shape. It leaks all the time. We have it repaired every single year. We keep it running, but it's really not right. That one in there is newer. The problem is it doesn't handle other spaces next to it. So what we want to do is replace that with some ductwork and be able to handle all of the spaces that are next to it. That entire project, we just got a quote in from the contractor in the field that we are familiar with, $165,000. The town, the select board last night approved the town and school phone system upgrades on page 4 here on the top. And I signed the contract today right away. So the quotes are going to expire if we didn't do this. Basically, we're going to convert from our existing hardwire system here and our connection to the phone company for phone lines to a what is called voice over internet protocol system. And we will have a cloud-based telephony. So basically, it's an internet phone. And no matter where you are, you can access your account, your voicemails, and other things. But it's a subscription-based service now, not a hardware-based service. So we'll be converting a very cheap project, look at this, $31,000 to get all brand-new phones in all of the school buildings, in all of the municipal buildings except the library. 31 grand, that's not much. That's because it's a subscription service. So you're gonna pay almost as much every year to have it, right? But it is quote-unquote the thing to do in today's modern office environment, is VoIP. Then we put in the vault for the town clerk in the old locker room. Next project down
I'm
would
sorry,
be.
Matt.
Yep.
Getting back to the phones, was that the phone upgrade you were talking about for the fire alarm?
So
You need it.
it would include connectivity for the fire alarm.
Okay,
All of these smart systems, ultimately what they allow us to do, especially me and Adam, is see the entire building operation from an app on our phone and know what's going on in the building.
Made
And
your IT guys a lot more important than they used to be.
yes, it does. But right now, we're on a completely different phone system from
Yeah.
the schools. So when we call over there, we dial all the digits and we work our way through the auto attendant
Yeah.
and everything.
but it would be better for the fire here. Fire, we need
It
to
will be
upgrade.
compatible with whatever
Yeah.
fire alarm system we put in. It won't be an obstacle.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
So we still have that on our list, the
Yeah.
municipal fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as soon as we resolve the roof.
Yep.
And then these last two were call them the tinsel and the Christmas lights on the Christmas tree, because these are the proposals that don't have universal support, but which at some point in the foreseeable future we'll have to address. One is an additional command/utility vehicle for the fire department, and the other is a bus for the seniors. I think that number for the bus is going to go down. I just went to a national contract that we use to purchase vehicles and asked them, quote me a bus that does this, that, and the other. And they said $150. They also said if you ordered the same bus 2 years ago, it would have been $75. It's just that there are so many supply chain issues and other issues with this particular Ford chassis that they're just hard to get to. Listen, if you're selling something that's scarce, you're going to make money, right? You're going to pass that on. So the senior center, the adult social center director has been researching less costly configurations. I think she's going to come in with a lower number. Going back to my earlier comment about the population of the town changing, it really is only a matter of time before you have a bus service for the adult social center. Most towns that have a greater proportion of their population that are elders than we do already have not one, but a couple of buses that run back and forth to the hospitals and medical campuses, because a lot of people can still live at home but may not be able to drive, or may not be willing to drive for their appointments. And a lot of public transit just doesn't go where our people need to go. So most municipalities that are bigger than Douglas have at least one or more buses, for the primary purpose of getting residents to the center for nutrition and for socialization and everything else, but also to see to their other needs. So it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Now, that particular item is also on the warrant for November town meeting. So the decision has been to try to pursue funding from any source that would make it available.
So the items that were approved by the selectmen last night,
So design for HVAC at the fire department, $8,500. And then on the top of page 4, the first two items. A new phone system at Town Hall and a new Douglas Public School System phone system.
okay. And you mentioned something about the town clerk's,
Yeah, so she's on page 4 as well, I believe.
yes.
200,000 is a very back of the envelope estimate of what it would take to do all this work, all these bullet points.
So was that approved, or? No.
Nothing else, just the 3 items I mentioned.
Okay.
So roughly $40,000, give or take 500.
Okay.
So that
And-
doesn't even change the digits. It's still 2.37. But no, sorry, it does change, it's 2.33. It doesn't
Yeah.
change the first 2 digits.
Questions? Comments? No? Thank you for the information.
So Madam Chair, if you are through with me, I would
Yes.
ask to be excused so
Yes.
I could
I
relieve my
think so.
babysitter
Any
of
other questions for Matt?
No.
purgatory.
Thank you.
Lot
Thank you for your...
of information there, thank you.
Yes.
Take care, have a good
Yeah.
night.
You too. Okay, the next item, meeting schedule. We held off on doing this last meeting. You've got a copy of all the dates, and
You want a
any
motion?
thoughts? Can't anything stand out, jump out at you that you don't think you'll be able to meet? I mean, I do realize emergencies do happen, but
The only one would be, I don't know exactly when it is the school vacation week would be the April 19th one. That would, well, I think that would be the only one, but it might be the week after.
sure.
But that's only because I have a kid that's in school and hopefully I'll go away, so.
All right, other than that, everybody okay with that?
Yep.
So consensus or a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion that we approve this meeting schedule for 2023
I second.
as presented.
Okay. Motion's made by Fred and seconded by Rob?
Right.
Right. Sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Okay, we do have minutes for July 20th and August 10th. Have you had a chance to look them over?
Yeah, I had at the very top where it says absent,
Yeah.
Mike Fitzpatrick and Sean Holland. Now, Sean isn't a member anymore.
That's right. I have a note from Jen. So
Okay, that-
on both, yeah,
And Mike Fitzpatrick,
he's a
he's not a
consultant.
member.
He's
Well,
a-
not really. I mean, he's a selectman, he's not a...
No, they
consultant.
gave him the approval to be
Who did?
the Board of Selectmen. He brought it up before them, and he can meet with us and recommend if,
Well, then it needs to say Mike Fitzpatrick, consultant.
yeah, and that's right. Okay? And anything else? I do
Yeah.
have, oh, go ahead, Linda.
Oh, under number 1, it would be the second sentence where it says, he mentioned Clark having an institute for public demography. It should say Clark University, because
Sure,
that could be also be a person's name. Mm-hmm. Or a
good
town.
point. Anything else?
Yes, on the second page under JKL,
Yeah? You got the same
where-
one I got?
yeah, it should say at the very end, so he thinks
It
should
should
be
be-
soon. It should be this, the word this,
Or
or
it?
it.
Yeah,
So what do you think?
It.
This or it?
it,
Okay, it should be soon.
okay.
And that's all I have.
And I have one more.
Okay.
Under minutes, motion to approve the meeting minutes of June 22nd, 2022.
You said 22nd? It's the 20th. Oh, June?
Yeah. The minutes, to approve the meeting minutes of June 22nd, 2022. It should say as amended, not at. Right? Anything else? If not, do I hear a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Second?
Motion made by Linda, seconded by Fred. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. And on August 10th, 2022, the same thing, and as far as Mike Fitzpatrick and Sean Holland, Sean is no longer a member, and Mike is again
Consultant.
a consultant. And I do have one more. Fire Chief Kent Vincent will
I'd say just strike give.
give the committee members, no, because that doesn't
Fire
work.
Chief Vincent will
Give.
walk the committee members through, so just strike
Okay.
out the word give.
Good, okay. Anything else? If not, do I hear a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Second?
Linda and Fred. Thank you. Upcoming meeting, November 16th, and another one on December 21st. I don't think at this time we need 2 meetings, an extra meeting in the month, because we've done we've discussed the assignment we had regarding the fire station and highway department building and public safety. And please, if you can't make it, once you get your agenda, please let me know, because I have to make sure that we have a quorum. Anything else? If not, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved
Linda.
at 5:30.
Second?
Linda and Fred? Thank you. Motion, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Good meeting.